Hey guys, I'm Elizabeth Newsom and welcome to my BookTube channel. Today, I'm going to talk about my most anticipated reads for 2019. So we're pretty deep into 2019, but I have a few books this year that are on my TBR list, like my serious TBR list. Not just like I want to read them eventually, but I want to read them this year. And also this year there are a few releases coming out that I'm really looking forward to. So as far as the books that I already have goes, there's The Case for Christ. Lately I've been more interested in apologetics since coming to college. I've started asking more questions about what I believe and why I believe it. So I found The Case for Christ last year, and I really wanted to get to it because of course you can go through all these proofs for God's and God's existence, which is what I studied a lot in high school, but having proof for Christ's existence is something else entirely, because a lot of people believe that there is some sort of God or higher power, but they don't know or believe certain specifics about him. Like they think he's all-knowing and all-powerful, but that he's not all-loving. And of course, if you can prove that Christ actually exists and he was who he said he was, then that of course proves that third part, that he's not only all-powerful, all-knowing, but also all-loving. So I've been really wanting to find proofs for Christianity in particular instead of just God in general. And then I have Is God a Moral Monster? It's essentially about God in the Old Testament because, you know, a lot of crazy things happen in the Old Testament. And I remember this one class last semester where these two teachers were like, yeah, God is so ruthless and brutal in the Old Testament. And I wanted to say, no, he's not. He's a loving God. But I'd read the Old Testament and I knew of certain instances that I wasn't sure how to defend. So I heard about this book from my brother and I thought I'd start reading it, and it goes case by case and it looks at a lot of the different things that happen within the Old Testament and how it fits within God's character. So apologetics aside, I do have a few other fiction books I'd really like to read. There's Jane Austen's 7 novels. My brother's girlfriend got this for me for Christmas and I love the book. It's like, oh my goodness, look how pretty it is. It's gorgeous. And then, of course, Jane Austen is really funny and witty. Her sentences and how she writes, it's a bit more dense than what I'm used to because she uses a lot of vocabulary I haven't heard of, and just the structure's more complicated than a lot of times what we use when we're talking today or in books that we read today. But again, she's so witty. I just love the romance. I've gone through Sense and Sensibility so far, and I've read Pride and Prejudice, but I'd like to read it again and then finish reading all the rest of Jane Austen's novels, preferably within this year. Then there's Ted Dekker's The Bride Collector. I also got this last year. I know that Ted Dekker is sort of a thriller Christian writer, and I've been really interested in reading some of his thriller books because I've read his fantasy series, which was really good, but I've never read his thriller books, which is really what he's known for. There's also The Healthy Writer. So I was reading a book about self-publishing by this author, and I was looking up some videos by her, like how to use vellum, and in one of her tutorials for how to use vellum, which is an interior formatting tool for books, by the way, she went over the interior formatting for this specific book, and I'm like, whoa, I didn't know there was a book like this out there. Like, I love health, and I love writing, so like the idea of a book about a healthy writer is just amazing. So I went ahead and bought it. I started the first few pages, but I'm not really through it yet. And I really began to get serious about my health after a certain move when I realized that I'm primarily a writer, and writers do a lot of sedentary work, which is really unhealthy. And that unless I started to get my diet in shape and exercise, I was going to be a chunky little writer sitting in front of my keyboard and typing away at a story. So I really think it's great that there's a book that addresses this sort of issue with being both healthy and being a writer. Then there's To Best the Boys by Mary Weber. I loved Mary Weber's previous books, and I'm not completely sure what this book is about. I know it's speculative, so it's set in kind of a fantasy-ish setting. And I know it's this girl trying to get into some sort of scientific academy where typically there are just boys there. But quite frankly, I don't care what it's about. I know that Mary Weber is a really good author, so pretty much going to buy anything from her. Alright, so here's the synopsis, and it is a fantasy book. Every year for the past 54 years, the residents of Pennsbury Port receive a mysterious letter inviting all eligible aged boys to compete for an esteemed scholarship to the all-male STEMWIC University. Every year, the poor residents look to see that their names are on the list. The wealthier look to see how likely their sons are to survive. and Renteller opens it to see if she can derive which substances the ink and parchment are created from using her father's microscope. In the province of Calden, where women are trained in wifely duties and men are encouraged into collegiate education, 16-year-old Renteller wants nothing more than to become a scientist. As the poor of her seaside town fall prey to a deadly disease, she and her father work desperately to find a cure. But when her mum succumbs to it as well, Ren decides to take the future into her own hands through the annual all-male scholarship competition. With her cousin Selene by her side, the girls don disguises and enter Mr. Holmes' labyrinth to best the boys and claim the scholarship prize. Except not everyone's ready for a girl who doesn't know her place, and not everyone survives the maze. Dun dun dun! But yeah, it looks really interesting. I'm hoping there's romance in there, because there's romance in her previous books. And also, it's a young adult novel, so I feel like there will be romance in there, and I really love romance, so fingers crossed. But that just came out recently, and it looks really interesting. I just haven't had the time to read it yet. Then there's The Flight of the Raven, which comes out April 30th. So this is the second book to the Mark of the Raven series that I read earlier this year. And I just really love the romance that's going on between the two main characters, and really looking forward to this. Again, it's out April 30th, and I'll give you guys a synopsis so you can kind of know more about what it's about. Selene Ravenwood, once the heir to House Ravenwood, is now in exile. On the run and free of her family's destiny, Selene hopes to find the real reason her family was given the gift of dreamwalking. But first she must adapt to her new role as wife to Lord Damien Mars, the man she was originally assigned to kill. While adjusting to her marriage and her home in the north, her powers over dreams begin to grow. As the strongest dreamwalker to exist in ages, her expanding power attracts not only nightmares but the attention of the Dark Lady herself. With a war looming on the horizon and a wicked being after her gift, Selene is faced with a choice. Accept the Dark Lady's offer or search out the one who gave her the gift of dreamwalking. One path offers power, the other freedom, but time is running out. And if she doesn't choose soon, her decision will be made for her. So it looks really good. Unfortunately, I'm probably not going to have time to read it as soon as it comes out, just because April 30th is towards the end of this semester, which is crazy to think about. For me, May 4th is like the last day or the end of finals week. And after that, I'm headed home. It's just weird because I remember looking forward to college and being worried about all these things. In fact, I made a video about all the things I was worried about with college. And then now I'm here at the end of my freshman year. It's like, whoa. But anyway, my next to-be-read, or I'm currently reading book, is Reyr the Gold, I think. It's the second book in the Talon the Black series, and I loved Talon the Black and everything that was happening and how the romance developed and the world building. And also the characters. The characters are really deep and complex. So this book is being updated one chapter at a time on Wattpad, which is excruciating. Like, I have so much more empathy for my readers on Wattpad now. And unfortunately, her last update is late. It was supposed to come yesterday, but it hasn't come, and I'm just like dying a little bit on the inside, but it's okay. Anyhow, phenomenal book. It's one of the few Wattpad books, actually the only Wattpad book I actively keep up with and read the updates for. Typically, I try to wait for completed books. But in this case, it's an amazing story that I don't want to have to wait to read. Next we have Fearless, which is coming out April 23rd. So Fearless is by Tamara Leigh. I know it's the second book in this series. So first of all, she has this huge Age of Faith series. It's like 7 or 8 books, and I've read them all twice because Tamara Leigh is one of my favorite authors ever. So this series kind of shows how the second series came in place. It starts a few centuries before her main Age of Faith series. So she wrote the first book, and now the second book is coming out. I don't quite remember what it's about. Honestly, don't care, because I know I'll like anything she writes. She's another one of those authors. I'll just buy it if it has her name on it. But I know you guys don't know her as well as I do, so I will look up the synopsis. A captive Norman. Sir Gawain d'Argent knew the danger of allowing a woman to turn him from his purpose, and yet he answered her cry across a bloody battlefield. Now he finds himself the lady's captive among vengeful Saxons, weeks becoming months while his liege, Duke William of Normandy, subdues his new English subjects. Biding his time, Gawain plots an escape dependent on captivating his captor, a formidable quest with one more a warrior than a lady. But when his compassion is roused by the suffering of her people under the Norman rule, the question of escape is jeopardized by the answer to who exactly is captivated, and in a conquered country. What hope there is for enemies beyond a kiss. The defiant Saxon. Her husband and young son slain by invaders, Lady Hoissa lives only for protecting her people. And revenge. While outwardly bending the knee to the usurper, she amasses rebels to send the conquerors back across the sea, along with the silver-haired warrior she never intended to take captive. Now that Guarin d'Argent has cause to wreak vengeance of his own and knows his captor is a Wolfrith, she dare not release him, just as she dare not succumb to his efforts to turn her from her purpose. But all changes when she is betrayed by one of her own. Will the struggle between the English resistance and the Normans find the two on opposite sides of the battlefield? Or might the Lord have other plans for them? So, I just know I'll love the book. Honestly, I didn't like the characters that much in the first book, especially Lady Hoissa. I think that's how you say it. But again, if it's a book Tamara Leigh writes, I'm gonna like it. End of story. Then there's Coral by Sara Ella coming out November 12th, which is a really long time to wait. So Coral is essentially a Little Mermaid retelling. And Sara Ella is really good at like sweet romances and books kind of with a fairy tale fantasy type vibe. And here's the synopsis. 16-year-old mermaid Coral has always been different, standing out from her stoic sisters in a society where blending in is key. Worse yet, she fears she has been afflicted with the dreaded disease. Said to be carried by humans, the disease imposes emotions on its victims, causing them to commit unspeakable acts. The growing illness inside her, while terrifying, fascinates her very core. Where others see danger, Coral sees life. Could it be the colorless merfolk who are truly ill? Above the sea, 17-year-old Brooke Jordan has nothing left to give. A homeless girl abandoned and forgotten, the only thing Brooke can rely on is the ocean. Her aching feet find refuge within the cool and comforting waves, while her broken heart grows harder with each passing day. When Brooke's and Coral's worlds collide, everything alters in an instant. From learning to stand alone to discovering the strength it takes to rely on one another, the girls find that living requires taking that first painful breath. Each must make sacrifices, and when it comes to finding true love, let's just say the boys in their lives must learn to swim if they're ever going to survive the storms. Battling the odds against them, the girls will do whatever it takes to survive. But what must end for love and life to finally begin? So it looks pretty cute. Again, hints of romance, but it looks like it's not primarily a romance like some of her other books have. And I know, again, she's a really good author, so I'm definitely interested in reading it when it comes out. And then finally, there's Romanov by Nadine, and it's coming out May 7th. This is kind of a historical fiction fantasy book like her other one, Fox, which was pretty interesting. I really liked how many real historical aspects she had in it. So it'll be interesting to see what's Romanov about. But let me read you the synopsis. The history books say I died. They don't know the half of it. Anastasia Nastya Romanov was given a single mission: to smuggle an ancient spell into her suitcase on her way to exile in Siberia. It might be her family's only salvation. But the leader of the Bolshevik army is after them, and he's hunted Romanov before. Nastya's only chances of survival are to either release the spell and deal with the consequences, or enlist help from the Zash, the handsome soldier who doesn't act like the average Bolshevik. Nastya's never dabbled in magic before, but it doesn't frighten her as much as her growing attraction for Zash. She likes him. She thinks he might even like her. That is, until she's on one side of the firing squad, and he's on the other. So it has all the elements. It's fantasy, romance, author I like, so I'm pretty sure I'm guaranteed a good read with that book. I'll just have to try and wait until May 7th to read it. Well, there you guys have some of my most anticipated reads of 2019. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up and subscribe, because I post one bookish video a week, usually on Friday or Saturday, whenever I get around to editing it. And oftentimes it's on college life or books, because my life is both torn between the two right now. And in the comments, I'd love to hear from you guys. Let me know some of the books that you're looking forward to reading in 2019. Let me know down below, and I'll see you next time. Bye!